Hi all, welcome to another Toast Talks podcast. So I think we're on episode 3 now,
3.
getting on well, and but this one feels like there's been quite a big gap between the two because obviously with Christmas in between.
Yeah, just a memory at this point. But I suppose the topic today is probably a good time to discuss it.
Yeah,
Not only because of the New Year, New Me, January rush, but it's probably a topic that can go at any point in the year.
Yeah.
You know, we're saying it's a good time because you're looking at it from a calendar year, let's say. But I think as a business owner, you can probably implement what we talk about today at any point.
Yeah.
However you want to align it. So hopefully there's some useful tips
yeah.
that we can hand out today.
I think the thing is that the New Year, New Me thing, you can set all these goals and that sort of stuff, and then generally what you find is that you do it for a couple of weeks and then it all falls away and you go back into the same kind of routine that you had before. So I suppose from this, what we're probably trying to do here is be a bit more realistic about the planning and actually making it stick.
Yeah.
And actually building it in as part of your business rather than kind of setting these huge astronomical plans that really it's very difficult to deliver.
Yeah, you need to be realistic.
Mm.
You know, now you can be aggressive as well, getting the plans you set, but I think you probably want to look at 3 options probably for it. You know, be aggressive, be conservative, and maybe one other then just you're tracking against all of it. So and then you'll see exactly where your business is. But I think the point of it is being consistent with whatever plan you implement and making sure you stick to it. Because like you said, it's all good making decisions and putting things in place for the start of a year, but if you forget about it 3 or 4 weeks on, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know, you notice it now, like if you're training, so we're training for a 10-mile run, me personally, and
I've opted out.
But you can see at the start of January, you see a lot of people out running,
yeah,
and then slowly but surely you see it not as many. People are probably tailing off a bit at this point, so they've either committed to it at the start of January and thought, no, this isn't for me, and decide to pull out.
There are a lot of January gym memberships signed up, and then this is the point now where they're probably coming to, where the gym's kind of settling down back to normal. Although there seems to be a good bit more though, because actually when I was out over the weekend, and there seemed to be a lot of people out running and doing things, which is good to see because it wasn't always like it. I actually remember when I was growing up, nobody ever did that really.
Never.
So it's good to see that. but you know what? It's a good thing. It's a good. You'd prefer that than like I used to go out Friday, Saturday, and we'd probably be lying. Not being very productive Saturday, Sunday, and now people are out running and going to the gym and all this sort of stuff. It's good.
But if anything, it works wonders for a work-life balance. A good run and kind of the positive impact that would have on you going forward for the week ahead. Even it's brilliant. But look, I think back to what the topic is in terms of the planning.
Yeah.
Like all good runs, you need to have a plan.
Yeah.
So let's go back.
If you don't have a plan, but that's what I was actually going to say in relation to that is that if you actually have a plan and you can see that you're doing it and you're delivering it and the business is getting better, it's the same positive impact that you have. You can kind of you can see that you're making progress, even if it's small progress every day. Whereas if you just slip back into the way of going, and it's a bit chaotic. That really is not helping. But it can be really, really difficult to take yourself out of the day-to-day business to actually focus on it, give it the time it needs, but I actually then monitor it as it goes on. But anyway, look, the best place to start generally is what?
Well, if you're looking at this point, so we're now in January, obviously. So the best place to start is probably looking at 2025. So how was 2025 for you in your business? Financially, operationally, how was it? If you've never done this before, then I would suggest just taking stock, looking back over it, and kind of doing a few things for yourself in terms of like how would you go about this. Now, we're not sitting here saying go and pull off all these reports and numbers and just strictly looking at financial information for you to kind of make decisions or kind of plan ahead. You keep it simple to start with. If you look at financially, like what actually happened, You know, yes, you can look at figures in terms of what was our revenue, kind of 5 key ones, let's say. What was our revenue? What was our margins on certain things? What was our net profit? What was our cash on hand, let's say? And how did the cash flow, and how did we budget or anything throughout the year? So take those financially, basics. You don't have to drown yourself in numbers. And then even operationally, it's like, how did the business feel? You know, it's not just how did we perform, but how did the business feel throughout the year. So that's kind of where I would tend to start for 2025. It's just taking a step back, and without drowning yourself in numbers, like I said, and just reviewing it and see your pain points and then working from there. Then at that stage,
I think that's spot on. Is you know, but the one thing with that is that I sometimes find that business owners have a tendency to focus kind of on kind of the way they want it to be rather than the way it actually is. So I think trying to build on the honesty into that to make sure, you know, this isn't the process of kind of patting yourself on the back and being like, oh, we're doing this particularly well. That is part of it. But really what you probably are looking to identify is where are the areas that you didn't achieve. So it's stepping through each of the areas that you have end to end. So financials absolutely one part of it, but it's probably going through, you know, how do you acquire a client? If it's sales wise, if it's you know, how many customers did we serve in a year? So you know, what was the level of service? So starting at the very, very front end and then moving it through. So operationally, how did we get on? How did we deliver our service? And it'll be different for every business, but just logically stepping through each area of your business to, like Stephen said, keep it simple. Like, you're not looking to drown yourself in numbers.
No.
But honestly assessing, right, sales, marketing, operations, you know, delivery, after, how happy with the customers. So it could be, I don't know, Google reviews or whatever in terms of that. Staff, you know, how happy are your staff? How high was your turnover? How, you know, did you lose any key staff during the year?
Yeah, like operationally, there's probably a simple way to do it is you create 2 lists for yourself. You know, what went well, what was chaotic or stressful, and then what went well, what worked very well. Yeah. From there, then you're going to be able to easily identify problems, but also what things went well. So if there's any bottlenecks in your business, you know, you're going to be able to identify, is the bottleneck with you as the business owner? Because you make so much key decisions. You're so stuck on the day-to-day operation stuff that you may not see that as a problem in 2025, but it actually is. It's draining on other aspects of the business. Whether that be depending on your industry in terms of, is it strictly sales related, in terms of you're that salesperson, but it solely lies with you, then it's a decision that you're going to have to look at and trying to change for 2026.
Like operationally, if you can't step out of the business for 3-6 weeks and it runs without you, generally you don't have a business. What you have is a kind of a job. So you do that. That's a good point. And I like, and a lot of the business owners that we speak to, there's a serious reliance put on them. Now, don't get me wrong, that's kind of natural for a business owner, but you do want to kind of build it in such a way that it's not all so centrally bottlenecked around you. Like, if you're not there, can everybody else make the decisions? Can the business run without you? And that can be a very difficult process, you know. So what we're saying in terms of stepping through each of the departments, this can be painful because you're really dragging stuff to the surface and kind of having to deal with it, and it's difficult because
but not
some of
only
it you
that,
might not want to know.
Not only that in terms of your involvement in it, but you know, if you do create the 2 lists, it identifies other areas that maybe you're weak in. You know, so you're identifying certain processes internally. You know, if you can't effectively track your figures financially, why is that? Is it because the systems you have in place at the minute are outdated? There's no system that exists. You know, so it's those certain things that you can identify efficiencies with the processes that you can then start to implement for 2026. So that's what I mean by making lists. It's just kind of stepping back and going, do we have everything in place that sets us up best for 2026? If not, then build from there. You can identify bottlenecks. You can, on the positive side, you can see, right, who's our best performing staff? Are they consistently delivering?
Yeah.
And or are we over capacity in terms of do we need to hire? Are we under capacity in terms of or are we over capacity? Sorry, in terms of look, maybe that person isn't really needed in that area of the business, that it can be used somewhere else in the business. That it's probably looking at departmentally. If you are a business that has different departments in terms of are we set up here for 2026 and growth and being able to scale? So that's probably the benefit of having this kind of list. Just if you just write out a list and you can identify these things and then try and tackle them if there is any issues, but build on them then if they're positive. And try and grow it for 2026.
That's true. Like build on them if they're positive. So we kind of find quite useful, and it was something you kind of started whenever you were like, let's do a SWOT analysis, and I was like, I don't think I've heard of a SWOT analysis, and so like A-level business studies or whatever. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So it's pretty basic. What are we good at? What are we not good at?
Yeah.
Where can we maximize, or what could be so if that's selling a different product or going into a different market or whatever, and then what's going to change. So one thing that assessing and planning can be is that certain things are going to happen, like without naming specifically, there's been a couple of businesses recently locally who've obviously noticed that they can't continue because their business rates are going to change, and employers' national insurance has been a significant increase in their expenses. So that is an extremely difficult position that they've had to take, that they've had to look at their business and go, this isn't sustainable going forward.
Yeah.
And they've had to shut a particular aspect of it to protect the other parts of the business. So they are continuing to trade, but they've had to make a very, very difficult decision to actually close one area because it's no longer sustainable because of the cost. That is tough to do. But if you don't do that, that can bring the whole business down.
Now, like a lot of what we're talking about today it's very industry specific in terms of how you plan. You can set out a plan, but if you're in the hospitality seems to take a big hit, right? And what we've seen in the news recently is there's a lot of hospitality businesses that can't sustain it for whatever reasons. I think of the ones that was in the news recently, I think there's about 110 jobs that are going because of it. But they're just citing costs in terms of rising employee costs and VAT in the hospitality sector. Like it's just not sustainable. And I think Colin Neal, in the hospitality Ulster, he had said if someone in hospitality had come to him and asked him, should I set up a business in hospitality? He couldn't give them an answer because he would probably say, I don't think so, because you're going to lose money on it. And it's true. Like they really struggle in the hospitality sector. So in terms of planning for that, if they planned last year, which I'm sure they did, these businesses, would it have changed things? Probably not. It's just that industry that it's hard for them to cope and stay above water. So like approach and planning is probably different per sector. I would say.
Exactly. And every sector will be different in terms of what they need to look at and what's kind of central to them. So it does have to be tailored. But business owners know their business inside out, and they know the bits that they're doing well, and they probably do know the bits that they're not doing so well and that they need to focus on. So whenever the review is complete and you've been honest about where you are and you've identified the strengths and opportunities and weaknesses and threats, probably the next phase of it then is to take it then, right, what's the key thing? What do we need to achieve this year? And
well, if you take stock from 2025, then again, you try and keep it financial and operational for 2026 in terms of planning. So how do you plan for 2026? Like, what are you planning for? So again, splitting it down financially or operationally. Financially, I would probably look at, again, what are you trying to achieve? All right. So look at probably your most likely outcome. So what's our most likely outcome? Or probably our base outcome for 2026. And then, like I said at the start, you can kind of go, it's easy to build on that then, because if you go, right, here's our base, we have a pipeline, we probably know what our pipeline is going to be for the next 12 months. Whether that be leads, again, if you're industry specific and that you're tracking leads, or whether that be contracts that you're securing over the next 12 months, then it's easy then to build on your base and then project forward. Now, once you do that, you'll be left in a position of going, actually, do you know what? This is probably conservative and that this is probably an expected outcome. But then you can kind of really draw into financially of going, right, but how can we actually get beyond that? So I would probably suggest tiering it and going basic in terms of this is what we can achieve. And then maybe aggressive then at the higher end of going, right, but what if we add maybe 3 or 4 more contracts onto this?
Yeah.
What would it look like at that point? So I think you're probably setting expectations across different levels, but one might be overly aggressive where you might, if you don't hit it, you're probably sitting thinking, well, it was aggressive, we didn't think we would have hit it, but if you do hit it, then it's like, right, fantastic, let's see what 2027 is going to look like then at that point. But I think it's good to identify and probably plan out 3 different scenarios, I think, financially.
100%. And there's no point in either setting your goals like far too optimistically, in which case you've like it's just a pipe dream that it's ever going to happen. Because motivationally wise, it'll become clear pretty quickly that you're not going to achieve that. But you also don't want to set them to, where it's like, oh, we got them. It's like a target that,
Yeah, but even more importantly, it's probably better to set the absolute, if shit happens, like, what does it look like then at that point? If we know what our pipeline is, but maybe if that doesn't go to plan, what is the worst case scenario look like here? Because you'll find planning becomes a lot better at that stage. It becomes easier, I think, because rather than going out all aggressive, because you might have this pipeline and you might have these contracts that are landing, and you think we need to hire now because in order to service these, and then you start bringing in all these staff, and maybe the contracts don't go as well as what they probably you had initially thought. Then you're left in a position where we're overstaffed at this stage, and you have a couple of difficult decisions to make at that point. So I would think worst case scenario is probably should always be there in the background, just to kind of effectively look at and go, if it doesn't work, can we still sustain the business moving forward?
And one thing that you were saying in terms of like, so if you add the additional contracts, right? So sometimes what business owners have a tendency to do is, right, well, sure, we'll do all this, we'll acquire this contract, and they, maybe get sales guys, and they start winning the contracts, and everything's great, and we're doing wonderful, and that's excellent. But you have to deliver those contracts, you know? So it's not as simple as just looking at the acquisition of the contract. So if we actually increase that, do we need to add operational staff? Do we need to add, additional finance staff? So again, being realistic about the delivery of that, just chasing contract and increasing revenue, is you can end up where you leave the business in more trouble because you're then not delivering on the contract that you've won, which is so problematic. So it's thinking through the whole thing. And I tend to find that, speaking to some people, they're like, oh, listen, if we get the contract, we'll sort that out afterwards. And you're like, you try and go out and get a member of staff that you need to fill that. And, it could take 6, 8, 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Even they might not be there.
Yeah, longer, because then you're having to bring staff in culturally. You have to make sure they buy into the business in terms of, do they fit the business? You're not just looking, can they service a contract? You need to do they fit the business culturally? Are they going to fit in well with the rest of the team? So those are the kind of decisions that, yes, you're going to have to make, but I wouldn't be looking at it just from a financial standpoint of going, as long as they can deliver this contract, the job's done. It's not really, because they're going to be embedded to your business, they're going to understand the business, and they're going to want to have to fit in culturally, is what I would say.
But that is a huge part that people don't really, they probably shy away from because it's such a difficult thing. You can have one member of staff or maybe a few members of staff that are fulfilling a role for a period, but culturally they're not fitting. And this is probably an opportunity where you have to, and this comes back to the being honest with yourself and kind of going, all right, they're doing a job now. It's fine. Once we get to this point, then I'll deal with that. I'll either try and get them back into on the bus, or or I'll kind of have a word with them, and if they go, they go. But sometimes that needs to be addressed because you don't you maybe don't see that cultural misfit is actually having a knock-on effect on a whole lot of the other staff.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the one bad apple thing can spoil a cart, and that's the longer you don't address that, the more damage it does to your business. And it's tough, and nobody likes to do it, and that's what I mean. People sometimes shy away from it, but again, from a protecting your business standpoint, unfortunately, that's sometimes necessary.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that is the people who are really contributing and who are really actually the valuable people that you know that they're absolutely knocking it out of the park all the time. You have to keep them and make sure that they're happy. And if you're turning over staff, you have to be honest with yourself and say, what am I doing wrong? Because, you know, I get people in, we're training them up, but they're choosing to go and they're going elsewhere. You know, it's a competitive market in terms of employees, and it's getting very difficult to retain really good members of staff. And what you sometimes find is that you're turning over the good ones.
Yep.
They're going elsewhere because they get other opportunities, and you're retaining the not so good ones. So again, you can then break that down into an objective, and that it's either dealing with somebody who's underperforming or dealing with somebody who is overperforming and making sure that they stay there. And that could be an objective for the year that you're saying, right, what I need to do to retain that person, I need to, you know, reward them or, you know, make sure that they're incentivized or that they buy into the culture or whatever it is, spend a bit more time with the person.
Yeah. Because that kind of leads on. So financially, yes, we talked about what do you do for 2026, right? Develop a plan. Best case, worst case, and kind of conservative, right, in terms of how do you plan that ahead. But then operationally, it ties on what we just discussed there of going, pick 3 things that you as a business owner are prioritizing for this year. Will it be 3 things a quarter, let's say, if you want to really segment? Because quarter, I think, it's all right for the year, but it's easy to forget. But if you're doing it quarterly, it's easier to track because you're going, you can't take stock every quarter rather than doing it once a year. So probably to be more consistent with it. But let's say pick 3 items in a quarter. I would say one is if you as a business owner are involved massively operationally, then I would say first quarter of going, I need to take 20% of my time. I'm going to eliminate my involvement by 20% in terms of that, right? That's one thing to look at. But then you're looking at removing any recurring bottleneck that might happen. Now, what you're saying there in terms of the good staff, and that, yes, they have to be, you have to look after them, but what you might find then is you have this one staff member that's very good, but then they bring bottlenecks at them because your staff under that are kind of coming in and out and in and out. So it's kind of trying to eliminate a bottleneck with that one individual by having a team of 3 or 4 that can cope in the eventuality that this person goes on holidays, like as minor as it is, or, you know, take a 3-week holiday somewhere, but that they deserve and whatever. But then at that 3-week period, do we have the person that can cope, or is it going to bottleneck? And then that person comes back from holiday, and it's just
and there's you know, you need to look at the reasons why that person is so central to the thing, and maybe it's the staff underneath or not. You know, you maybe need to put a bit more time into training them, and you're like, oh, listen, you know, I'll get around to that someday, and you're like, you know, a quarter goes past and you haven't done it, and then another quarter goes by and you still haven't done it. So it's you know, it's setting out those like numbers. I am going to sit with this person for, you know, half an hour every week to make sure that, so it can be as simple as I'm going to allocate half an hour in my calendar to train that person, or I'm going to get that key member of staff to sit with them for half an hour to make sure they do that, and just making sure you track that through. So again, it's there's probably overall the 3 kind of key areas, but then right, how do you achieve those 3 things? So if it's like you're saying your leads business or whatever, it's, you know, acquiring clients, or you know,
do you get rid of a product, or do you introduce a new product?
It's what's the actual action point underneath that to actually make you achieve that. So it's grand you saying like, oh, give you an example of we want to win 3 contracts, right? What do you need to do to make that happen? You know, is it going out and speaking to customers? Is it cross-selling to them? Is it hiring a salesperson to actually do that and monitoring how the salesperson's going on? Is it increasing marketing spend? So just putting numbers, not kind of going into huge amounts of detail, but just being realistic about what does it actually take to deliver that. So is it, you know, starting Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever way? What are the steps that you need to take underneath that to make sure that that objective happens?
Yeah. But then making sure you have the right systems in place then as well. So even if you said you're stall out in terms of financially, you operationally of this is what you want to achieve, but do you have the systems in place to do that? So I would, again, just I would look at each aspect of your business. Sales.
Yep.
What systems are we using for sales? Do we have, is it running as smooth as what it should be? Do we have credit control problems? Which ties back to your cash flow. If you have cash flow problem that you might have identified at the beginning whenever you're looking at 2025's performance.
Yeah.
What do we have for reporting?
Yeah.
Do we have everything in place for payroll? Simple things of tech has moved. Everything now that you can get systems ways to improve everything. There's the menu out there is endless in terms of all these different things for each business as well. So there might be a small cost to it in terms of implementing it, but the time saved and the efficiencies that'll drive across your business it's priceless. So
well, that's because say if you're coming on, you're saying, right, I need to review 2025, and it's a huge issue trying to gather the data that you need for that period of time. If you are asking your finance or your sales guys, how did we perform in 2025, and they come back and go, oh, I'll get you that by the end of March, you're like, how are you supposed to make decisions if your information is very limited? Now, you will have a gut feel as to how it's actually going, because your bank account will probably tell you. but if you need to then start looking kind of back, like you're saying, in terms of the technology, right? How do we track those particular aspects?
Yeah.
If you don't have effective systems and processes in place, that may be where you need to start. Is that right? I can't actually start planning forward until we fix this problem and until we have the right information. And they're like, how many businesses do you see where you ask them and they're like, I don't know, it's about and you're like, how often do you get management information? Just I see it when I know it.
A lot of them tend to know what the revenue is. Like that's the easiest one for a lot of business owners. They know what the revenue is because that's what they tend to look at, right? But other areas of the business, it's probably where they probably need to focus on a bit more.
Yeah.
To have that correct information to be able to make decisions, because it can't be all just revenue driven in terms of the decisions you're making. So you have to have the information at hand, but that information has to be available when you need it. Yeah. You can't be waiting a number of months, because in any industry that you're in, a month or two can change everything. But like again, to tie it back of 2025, you want to keep it simple. If you want to just ask yourself, what was your biggest one? Yeah. What was your biggest pain point? Even those two small things to start with. And then you can start building on kind of 2026 and identifying what worked well and what didn't.
But do you find that people overcomplicate this?
Yeah, I think operationally is where a lot of people fall down in terms of reviewing it operationally. They only seem to review it financially. There doesn't seem to be an operational look at it. It just seems to be financially, we've done well, or financially we haven't done so well. There doesn't seem to be any, not that any, like there's a lot of it is just financially driven, not operationally.
And like really the financials are the output of the rest of it. So if that kind of base layer of the operations and the main parts of it aren't performing well, you'll see it in the financials, yes. But at the time at which you see it in the financials, it's there's obviously a lag between how long it takes to translate through. So the better you can get into the detail, the better it'll be in terms of decision making. But the other thing is like you were saying, the simplicity of it. Sometimes it can be very simple changes that are necessary. Like you're saying, block out 20% in your calendar. Or kind of give more responsibility. Like there is a tendency for business owners to kind of, I'm the only person that can do this. I can do it well. And it can be a very difficult adjustment to actually then trust that your staff can do it. And sometimes it can be quite sobering because you realise they can't. And, so what do you have to do to actually enable them to do that so that they can actually go and deliver it for you? Yeah. And it can be that you're filling a lot of the gaps, and that's not sustainable long term. You'll burn yourself out.
Yeah, exactly.
And you won't have a business.
But yeah, keep it simple. Is probably what I would say from a planning perspective. And once you have the sample things in front of you, then you can build in terms of the financial and how to implement certain things. And if we get the system, how do we implement it? What's the time frame in terms of whenever we implement it, when will be operational? So, but it all ties into when's the best time to do this, right? And as a business owner, it might be on a calendar year because you've gone through Christmas, you've had that break, you're taking stock. If you've managed to take a break, because a lot of business owners are so consumed, and it's like, I never had a break. But if you do have that, if January is the best time to do it, but if not, then tie it into your financial year. You know, if your year end is March, June, July, August, try and do it around that time before it ends. If you have the information to. So systems will allow you to do that. If you don't have the systems in place, you're not going to do it until your accountant gives you a set of figures at least, which may be 4 or 5 months after your year end, which is useless information at that point. You know, a lot of things change. So I think the timing of this is key in terms of when you do it. But if you haven't done it before, I would suggest doing it now. To make sure your business is on the right footing moving forward.
Yeah. And I think, you know, that the simplicity is one thing, and then, you know, maybe like you're saying 3 per quarter, a manageable number. Like if you start doing like, I'm going to change all this and I'm going to change it now, like you have to be realistic about what you can actually deliver in the period of time. And there's no point in trying to like fix something at the back end of the system if the front end's not working. So you probably need to step through and see. And like we've said before about sequencing, so there probably is a logical place to start in terms of, right, we fix that, then it's going to bottleneck here. And whenever we say bottleneck, what we mean is a part where the capacity is an issue in terms of the staff can't deliver what's actually been signed up here, or it gets bogged down, it needs certain approvals from certain people who kind of aren't there, or it's fine saying that, like we were saying, if you won these 3 contracts, but can you actually deliver them? Do you have the men or the personnel to go out and actually fit the jobs, or whatever the case may be? So you have to then address that bottleneck. And so, you know, it can't be that, you know, winning the contracts and then hiring the person is maybe the sequence. You maybe have to look at it and say, right, we need to kind of go out and start trying to win that contract and recruit at the same time, which can be a difficult decision because you're kind of going cost versus income. We don't know if we're going to win the contract. So there might be a sensible way. Do you scale it in? Do you phase it in? Do you win one contract and then that one contract you recruit the person? So you have to be sensible about the sequencing of the things.
Yeah. No, you're right. But again, back to the personnel, it's not, try to think of it not just from a financial standpoint. Try to think of it of going, is it best for the business overall moving forward? That's one thing I would probably suggest. Because it is just easy to bring a person on and say, right, we need this extra person to service XYZ, but if it doesn't work out, you're left with a contract that you can no longer service, or this individual has gone because they're not a cultural fit to the business. But all those things need to be considered. But it's simple things that a lot of people overlook. Yeah, it's what I would say.
And I think monitoring see progress is probably where it tends to fall away. Like if you tie it back to the January new year new me. You know, everybody said, I'm going to go to the gym, 5 days a week, and I'm going to spend an hour, and I'm going to do cardio and weights, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to go out a 10-mile run. And like you tend to find they stick at it for 2 weeks and then they fall away. And it's kind of the same in business, is that they set these hugely optimistic objectives and goals, but they don't actually then say, right, well, how do we actually make sure that we're on track? How are we going to be held accountable? So is it that on a monthly basis I sit down with my key member of staff to actually review where we're at, and again being honest about where that is? If you're saying you're going to do 3 of these things and you've only done 1, at the end of January you have to say we were supposed to do 3 and we've done 1. Like, folks, what happened?
And for whatever reason, it might have been a good enough reason for it, but it's still accountability. It's still saying and keeping people in tune with, this is what the expectations were. We haven't met them for whatever reason, but let's make February better. Don't say let's make 2027 better. I would say let's make February, March, and do it on a monthly or quarterly basis. Because again, it can be overlooked, and you can end up letting it go, and then when you look at 2027 when it comes around, you're kind of going, you're in the same position again. The business is going nowhere, and it hasn't really grown.
And there's probably 2 parts to it. One is in terms of monitoring the goals, right? We were supposed to do this 3 times, that 4 times, that 5 times.
Yeah.
How did we get on? That might be a monthly end review. Could only take 15, 20 minutes. You review it and you say, well, we didn't do it because X, Y, Z, but let's make February better. And then maybe on a quarterly basis, you have it in your calendar and you do, right, I'm going to look at the objectives overall. So we wanted to do this objective, that objective, that objective. Are we on track?
Yeah.
Are they complete? Is it done? Do we need a new objective for the next quarter coming? That'll probably take longer. But if you have those in your calendar and you schedule it out, and you hold yourself accountable to actually making sure that you track the progress, maybe probably month to month, and then you review the objectives to make sure that you're kind of on track to do that. There should probably be an overall, we want to make 2026 the year that we increase sales, or there's probably a headline overall thing that the objectives come from, but you review that probably yearly, and that's.
But a lot of things change through the year as well.
Yeah,
the budgets that come around that change everything. That make you make different decisions at that point in time. So that's why the consistency is key, because things can change. And these new things come up that make you have to maybe alter what you've done at the start, and maybe the objectives will change, maybe the strategy changes overall. So it's making sure that that if it does change, that we still have what we need in order to grow the business.
Well, that's really true. So if you're not reviewing that on a quarterly basis and you set a plan for the entirety of 2026, assuming that it's going to go like this, that's the reality of that is never going to happen, because you could plan and plan and plan, and then a competitor opens next door, or this place closes and that affects you, or something else changes, you lose a key member of staff. All of those things are going to completely change what actually needs to happen within the business to actually do that. So you probably have to then look at redoing it at that point. It can only be adjusting that point, at one point, but just making sure that you're consistent in that, and kind of saying, right, we need to take time, because what's going to happen, without a shadow of a doubt, is if you're being consumed by the day-to-day operations in 2025, if you don't set aside time, it's going to be the case in 2026. You're just going to fall back into the same thing, and you'll get to December and go, I promised this year was going to be different, and it wasn't. And it's going to be the same as the people who sign up to the gym in January, and it's basically becomes a charitable donation February, March, April.
Are there any tools that could help our audience to plan, preferably ones maybe made by a proactive accountant?
That's a good point, Oshin.
Just reminding you.
We have developed a template or a planner to actually run through this. So basically, to try and help business owners. Everything's going to be different for every business, so there's no way to do this all encompassing.
There's no
all universal tool.
No universal tool for it. It's very industry specific, but I think the basic principles and can apply across all industries, really. But to be very specific, and I think it becomes specific when it comes to your financial aspects to me. Like a lot of the operational, a lot of financial kind of goals and what you expect can be industry wide, but I think financial is where you probably just need that and an additional bit of input from a proactive accountant, where you really drill into the business in terms of certain KPIs, your key performance indicators, and then really drawing into it to be able to effectively plan financially. But I think a lot of the basic stuff in terms of just small questions to ask yourself can be industry wide.
Yeah. And so what we've done is developed a template for you to kind of step through, review the previous year, kind of look at your strengths and weaknesses, plan your objectives, the measures of how you achieve those objectives underneath that, and then kind of plan the financials. You probably need to plan as well, so there's this year, where do we want to be 3-4, so have it in the back of your mind. It's not it's very, very difficult to plan for those, but just where you would like to be.
Just ask yourself that question as a business owner: what do you want from the business? Like, what's the plan? Is the plan to sell it in 5 years, and you sail off into the sunset, or is it, that simple question of what is your plan over the next 5 years? What do you want to have with the business? Whether it be, I want to get it to a position where we can, maybe my children are coming along and they're taking on the business. So that is probably a good question to ask yourself as well, is where do you want to see it? Because a lot of that will then fall into the plan and financials and everything else of what you want to do with it. Because if it's to sell, your goal is to what? Maximize whatever the value of the business is whenever you do decide to step away from it.
And that is a good, because the approach to that is different to if somebody just has a lifestyle business and they're like, well, I want to make a decent wage out of it. Okay, that's different. What you pursue in terms of KPIs, like you're saying, and don't be scared by the term KPIs. It's not, but what you actually have to do within the business will differ depending on if it is being built for sale, if it's for your children to take over one day, if it's to kind of just extract as much income as possible. Those things are going to mean different kind of objectives and strategies. But the one thing, I suppose, in all of that is the planning, like we're saying, keep it simple. This isn't kind of developing a rocket ship in terms of the complexity of it. Just get the fundamentals and the basics right. Make sure they're solid, and then you can then go on and do stuff. Pursue other things. But if you're doing that and the basics aren't right, and you don't have the right people in the right place, it'll be very, very difficult to kind of advance the business and grow it and bring it on. And the other side of it is, you probably will need input from other people, which maybe that might be your accountant, your current accountant, or a proactive accountant, or it might be, other key members of your team. Sometimes it can be, whoever you're in business with is sitting down and kind of saying together, right, what do we want? It might be a collective. And then from there, really, what I'm trying to say is, even if it's a really kind of basic, simple strategy, if you stick to it consistently and you execute the plan, that is much more valuable than a really elaborate strategic plan where you're going to take over the world that falls by the wayside and sits by February. It's
like, to keep it simple and kind of, if you want to put one kind of phrase to it, it's just keep it simple and consistent. That's it. Like, and you realize then it becomes a bit easier then to make decisions moving forward. 100%. It doesn't have to be rocket science in terms of what you set out. Keep it simple, and if you're consistent with it, you will notice changes. You will make decisions that either for the better for the business, or you'll make difficult decisions as well, whether that be for staff or whatever. But if you keep it simple and consistent, you will notice change.
I think that's very good. That's very good. So we'll publish links to the guide. So if people want to download that, Oisin, do you want to give us a bit more detail on that?
In terms of the document, you'll be able to download that. There'll be links in the description. It feels quite surreal me saying links in the description on our YouTube here. Just too much of it, but there'll be links there. Also on our link tree, basically just wherever you're accessing us from. We'll also put in there our State of AI 2026 guide that we put out at the beginning of this month. It kind of ties into that review of systems that Stephen had mentioned, basically, where there may be AI tools or softwares that can alleviate some workload and save you some time, but it is one of those things you need to do a bit more research into, as it's something that I think people are kind of rushing into without looking at, which is what the guide sort of looks at. So that'll be there as well, and then back from next month we'll be back to having 2 episodes a month with a guest. We're looking forward to putting that out.
Perfect. That's last thing in for me. Just, we talked about KPIs in terms of people think, well, what's that, and tend to get scared of it. But like, if you want to drop us whatever industry you're in, I'm sure we can provide kind of benchmarks and KPIs that you can track against for your industry.
And the other thing, if you generally just want to have a conversation with us about kind of what does this potentially look like, look, we're happy to have a conversation with anybody about it. So I mean, feel free to do that. You can do that on the website. But listen, thanks for listening, folks, and I hope you find that useful, and you can download the guide when it's available.
Yep.
Cheers, everyone.
Much, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.